Hello, this is Neil, the art instructor at masterpaintingnow.com. The link's in the description of this video, and it's also in the video itself. Go there to watch other free drawing lessons and also painting lessons and even Photoshop lessons. All right, so let's get started in drawing the female in 3/4 view. Quickly, before we get started, I just wanted to say, one, we're not going to be drawing this boring pose this time. We're going to be drawing a little more interesting pose. Also, I'm going to stick to more realistic proportions because I got a comment from someone saying, hey, you always, they kind of made it sound like that's all I draw is, comic leg women with fake boobs. And it's true. I mean, when you draw comic and manga ladies, they all have breast implants. That's how you draw them, right? So I'm going to kind of draw a more realistic person here that has realistic breasts that hang with gravity and things like that. We're also going to do a more interesting pose than we did before. So if you happen to have watched that video before I took it down, you can still watch it. Now, the reason why I took it down is not because, it has comic book proportions. Almost every video I have has that. I took it down because the nipples weren't aligned correctly, and I thought I had fixed that in the video, and I didn't. I don't like having errors like that in my videos. Anyway, so let's go ahead and draw this person in 3/4 view. There are some things I want you to keep in mind when drawing the person. Notice if I have a straight line coming across for nipples, they're not quite at a straight line. They're at a slight angle. If I connect the actual nipples themselves, you can see they fall on a slight angle. Same thing with the collarbones and with the bottom of the breast. They fall on that angled line, not on an exact straight line. The reason why that is because when you draw a person in 3/4 view, they are at some sort of, most likely, a 2-point perspective. You can see two sides of an object that is a side view and a front view, even in first point perspective. How that happens is, just really quickly, if you have a box like this and single point perspective, and the horizon line's back here, and the vanishing point is behind the object, then all you see is the front plane. But if you move the object over here, this all stays horizontal, right? And those say vertical is not a 3-point, but they come back to that same point, that same perspective line. And now you can see the side plane of that box. The same thing would happen with the person. If the camera's here and the person's standing over here, you would see a little bit of the side view and the front view. It looks a little bit different, though, than 2-point perspective. 2-point perspective is usually how it's done. That is, usually this happens when you have the camera here and the object can be right here, but the object is turned. So I actually take that cube and I turn it in space. And when I do that, now I have a horizon line and I have two vanishing points on that horizon line that the box is connected to. And so now the side plane lines are going back into perspective, and the front plane lines are going back to perspective. They're no longer horizontal. And this is the plane that we're going to be drawing the female in. And so that's why you have the lines here are going back into perspective somewhere. In this case, they're kind of going, all of it's going up because the perspective of this female, and it gets more drastic as it goes down toward her feet. Notice these lines aren't nearly as angled as the ones down here. So the reason why they keep getting more angled is that means the vanishing point is up here somewhere, which means the horizon line is up here by her neck. We're going to actually draw the horizon line more down by her crotch, though. It makes it a little bit easier. The next thing I want to do, because we're going to be doing a more complex pose, is that sometimes if you have a tilt to something, so if from the front viewpoint, the rib cage is like this, straight dead on, but if from the front viewpoint, that's not a 3-point view or 3/4 viewpoint, you kind of tilt like this, and then this is the hips here. So the hips are forward, but the rib cage, it's still front view, but it's turned to the side. That is, she's tilting sideways, right? When that happens, when she's tilting sideways, like as if to reach and grab something or something like this, when this happens, notice the breast, even the nipples, are all on this angle, and same thing with the collarbones. They're all going off to some point way off here in space, even though the horizon line is down here. That is actually, they're actually going to a 3rd point in space. And you can get 3-point, 5, 6, 7-point perspective, depends how many objects are angled. But in this case, you just want to make sure that they're parallel to each other. Right, so that's important because we're going to be drawing a pose that kind of deals with that. Right, so let's first go ahead and line up our basic pose that we're going to be doing. Sometimes it's easier when you're drawing from your mind if you draw the pose from the front point of view and then draw it from the 3-point or 3/4 point of view or an angled point of view. Anyway, so let's go ahead and just draw the basic head in here. Right now we're just going to make that be a front-facing head. We'll change it to 3/4 in a little bit. Kind of imagine where the neck is gonna lie. I'm going to kind of pull it already, to the side a little bit as if it's 3/4 view. Know that we're going to have our collarbones in here, and this is what happens when you have 3/4 view, is this side of the body is going to be again to disappear from us because she's turning away from us like this, as if she's on a turning wheel. And because she's turning away from us, we see less of this part of her body. That shoulder begins to be covered up by her torso. Now I know this video is going to be a little bit longer than what a lot of people expect on YouTube. They expect a 5 to 10 minute video to teach them everything there is to know about a certain subject. And this is actually a complex subject, drawing female 3/4 view. Sure, I could make a quick 10 or 5 minute video on it, but you're not going to learn nearly as much that way. That is the whys and the hows. Learning the whys and hows really help solidify things in the mind and help you be able to draw from your imagination rather than just drawing that thing you saw. The first thing we want to do is establish our shoulders here, and that this shoulder is going to be out a little bit further than this one. So I'm going to pull this one in, pull this one out. Draw lines coming straight down to the crotch line, but know that they're going to be on an angle. And so the angle that they're going to be on is going to be on an angle like this here. And the reason why that is because that's the horizon line is somewhere maybe a little bit higher. It doesn't really matter. But in this case, it's because she's going to have her weight on this leg, and this leg is going to be coming out. And since this leg is being pushed up, her collarbones are at an angle like this right here, because her arms pushed down. That is, if I have her hips tilted this way, therefore this leg is the one that's pushing up, then naturally your shoulder wants to drop the opposite way. That way you have a crunch here and a stretch here. This is usually what happens when you're drawing the figure. So in that particular pose. So just keep that in mind, and that's going to keep the lines there. So this wrist is going to be a little bit higher than that one. And this is very important in order to getting and nailing the 3/4 view down. Keep in mind the hand is about 2/3 of the head, maybe a little bit more. It goes to about the eyebrow to the chin. So once you know the basic face proportions, then you'll have no problem drawing the hand. That just fits somewhere like this on the face. That's about how big the hand is in total. This is just this isn't pose view yet. This is just to establish the length of the arms so we can get the halfway point from shoulder to wrist, cut that in half, and this is going to give us the basic ending. That's also our elbows. It's also going to give us the ending of almost the ending of our rib cage. So first, let's just kind of do a front view, kind of the front view basic shape of the rib cage like this. Go down just a little bit past the elbows here. And then we're going to pull it up right here. Now we're going to have the center line. So let's go ahead and draw our center line here, which is going to come down like this and like this. I like to sometimes visualize the whole big shape that's going to be happening here. On this side, we're going to have the crunch side, because this is the side the leg's going to be pushing on. This is all the weight's going to be on this leg here. And so I can just kind of etch in this really quickly here. This is just to give me an idea that I know she's going to be putting her weight on this leg. It's not going to look like that, but this gives me an idea of where to start somewhere. And then this side is going to be more straight. And it's going to come out past her head a little bit. We're going to give her more realistic body proportions here rather than making her very skinny like we would in manga. And that's the thing. I'm actually teaching a how to draw manga figure course right now. And it's going to be done here soon. So that's why I'm so used to drawing this much thinner women, because you draw much thinner women in manga. So once I want to lay out at least the basic idea of what I'm going to do before I start getting into anything here, before I start adding in any details. But that first measurement is important. That measurement is universal, all the way down to like a 5-headed tall person. You can pretty much use that. Actually, it goes all the way down pretty much to any height. That is, even if you have a 4-headed tall person like this, the head fits in here. If you have the hips right here, none of that matters. What you do is that's where the hips are going to be. That is a 4-headed tall person as a child, and they're going to have shorter legs. And you just draw from the shoulder down to the end of the hip point, draw smaller hands because children have smaller hands. And then you have the same halfway point here, and that establishes your rib cage region. And then you have the hips, which fit in here. And then the legs are going to come like this, and then you have the halfway point for the legs. So in relative proportions, all that's, none of that changes. That all stays the same. Of course, the shoulders will be a little closer together if it's a child, but you get the idea. And so those principles stay the same. That is from the hip crotch down to the ankle, or actually go from the hip down to the bottom of the foot, reach a halfway point between those 2 points. On top of that, you have the knee. From the shoulder down to the wrist, and the shoulder goes, you take the shoulder and go all the way down to the crotch, and then you divide that in half, and that's where your rib cage is gonna fall into. So that always remains the same regardless. All right, so now we have the crotch in here. We have our center line. Now we have to divide the rib cage and get a half line. So what's important about 3/4 view, remember I said when you have that box, imagine we have a box in 2-point perspective. You see some of the side view of the box and you see the front view. So we're going to see some of the side view of the figure and some of the front view. Notice how we see the inside of the leg here. This is the inside side view of the leg. And on this side, we see the outside side view of the leg. We'll also see the outside side view of the arm and the inside side view of the arm. That's really important to understand when drawing the figure in 3/4 view. So first thing we're going to do is establish our hips in here, or not our hips, our rib cage. I want to be more like that, more close to like so. And so notice now I'm going to pull this right here. This is the side of the rib cage. It's really important that you establish the side of the figure, and this side's being out of view. So if you have two objects next to each other and you begin to turn around, the one object begins to be hidden by the other. So in this case, from the front view, you have a shoulder here and you have your rib cage here, right? Well, when you begin to turn to the side, since the rib cage is curved like an egg, so imagine we have an egg here, some sort of egg-shaped object here. It has curvature to it, right? And if you had another sphere attached to this, a spherical type object attached to the egg, if you began to turn this egg around, what would happen is the egg is still, if the egg is an egg, it's going to remain the same shape as you turn it around. It's because it's symmetrical, unlike the figure, like the rib cage. Then the egg starts, or the ball that's attached to the egg begins to disappear. You see less of it. And if it continues to turn around, eventually the ball will be in back of the egg and won't be able to see it at all. Understanding these basic principles are really, really important, and they're the fundamentals of drawing. So I highly recommend learning them, and I have a course on that too. It's actually part of my How to Draw and Paint Comics course. That's a bundle, and part of that bundle class is that I have, or course is that I have how to draw the form and lighting and perspective, and it's all the fundamentals. So I know that this shoulder here is going to be back in space more. I don't want to exaggerate this line too much, but it's not totally parallel. It's a little bit goes up in space like that, just barely, when I connect the shoulders together. And so that's what I want to establish here. And so I'm going to kind of pull the neck down over here, and I'm going to kind of have the shoulder go like this. And this shoulder over here is going to appear larger because we're seeing more of it. We're not only are we seeing a little bit of the side view of the shoulder, but we're also seeing the whole shoulder, rather than over here it's being hidden a bit by the rib cage. Not only by the rib cage, it's also going to be hidden by the hold on, let me get my train of thought back. It's going to be hidden by the breast as well once you draw that. So we can draw a little bit of the deltoid out here, and some of the arm as we view it from the side view. Make sure that the arm only comes down to the rib cage, because that's the elbow joint area. And then we'll see a little bit of the end of the arm coming down to that line right there that we had established earlier. We can start to erase some of what we have done just for measurement purposes. We saw that line that we have established with that, our measurement line here. And then the hand is going to fit into this area, and it's going to be you don't want to make it too big, so make sure you make it the same size here. Make sure that same size fits down here, like so. Right, so we're coming along here. We're starting to pull in. We can also start with the gesture. That is where you don't really focus so much on the actual thing you're drawing. You focus more on what's the shape you're trying to accomplish, the movement. And so you're just going to capture it with just a few lines. And I want to really have this this shape here, and I want to really pull this, pull the hip out, let's say. So I'm going to focus on these gesture lines here. right? So this is another way you can do this way. And let's say I'm gonna have this arm coming down like this, and if you want to kind of pull it with the opposite C's, you can. However you want to do your gesture, it's up to you. But here I'm focusing on. Actually, before I do breasts, I'm gonna draw this side here. This is gonna be less. Pull the leg out like this. So when you do gesture drawing, it's really just about capturing the main movement, and then you go in and you can start arranging it. If you actually already have lines pre-drawing out for measuring of where the head should go and the hips should go and things like, or the crotch, the head, and things like that, these few lines will really help when you do your gesture drawing to kind of make sure the measurements are already there. And then you can come in and start thinking about all the mechanical stuff. Know that I'm going to see part of the side view of her body here as well, so I'm going to come. Let's go ahead and start refining the shapes here a little bit to fit more of like the gesture drawing I just did. So I want to kind of pull in more here and then kind of pull out. Make sure the belly button is just a little bit lower than where the elbows would be. Let's go ahead and pull this arm here like so. And I think I'm going to pull it to the side. I might even have it come down further. I'm not sure yet. And then the hand will be fitting in here somewhere like that. I want to make sure I really establish this shape here. Boom, like that. And then this shape here is going to be less. So let's go ahead and have the hip kind of come across like this. This is all part of the side view. Actually, I'm going to come a little bit higher than that. So mainly you want to think about how that side view I was telling you about. So when you draw the hips, you kind of imagine this same kind of underwear shape, but now I know also that I have a slight angle to it, and because they have a slight angle anyway, because I'm angling the hips a little bit as well. So there's two like angles there I'm working with. I'm working with the fact that that's a side view there, and that's like the basic hip structure, but I can actually pull it down, make a little bit longer here for female hips. Right, and that's the side view, and it's angled like this because typically notice these hips, they're also angled, but she's standing equally on both legs. The one we're going to be drawing, the hips, it's tilted a little bit further because she's putting her weight on this leg here. So this is mechanically starting to think about how this is going to work. We're going to pull the leg down here like so. We're going to be seeing a lot of the side plane of the leg. And from the side view, if you have your rib cage, like this, and then you have your buttocks and stuff in here. You have this kind of shape come down to the buttocks, shoulders here, breast comes off over here somewhere like that. What's important here is that your leg kind of comes up, and you have your love handles right here on the side view. They kind of blend right into your leg, that kind of shape, and then the rib cage is kind of shaped like this as it comes up over there. And so you kind of have these 2 points meeting each other from the side view. That information is important to know when drawing the 3/4 view, because you can kind of see where this leg's come up here. You have part of the iliac crest right here. Right there, that's part of that hip bone that sticks out of the iliac crest. That's the part that sticks out. Over here it's sticking out too, but it's going to kind of wrap around like this. So it's a wrap around in space. So we're going to see a little bit of that bump stick out right there. That same bump is the same bump, and they're going to fall on that same parallel line, and that crotch is going to fall on that line as well. But establishing that is important. Also, I want to make sure that I keep the proportions more realistic. Again, I think I'm not pulling this out far enough, so I'm going to make sure I really establish the figure as I want it. So I really want to make sure I pull this out here, and I want to pull it out almost as far as the shoulder itself, right about here. So I want to make sure I really kick out the hip here. Make sure I have a larger hip area. Make sure I have that center point, which is here. Kind of come up. And the reason why it looks larger than it would from the front view is because you're seeing a little bit of the side view as well. So I want to make sure I establish that in this view. Let's come down here to the knee. And then so I'm seeing a little bit of, like I said, some of the side view of this whole leg as well. And let's make sure that we have the halfway point. That's about right. We're going to be seeing the foot a little bit like this because we're seeing the side view of the foot, so we're kind of able to see a little bit of the heel and the toes, and make sure that, you know, if they're both the same, notice how the toes go at an angle, so that's the angle there. But this leg here is going to be a little different. I want to make sure I still have that kind of angle for the knees. One knee is will be a little bit higher than the other, even though it's also being kicked out. I might be able to see a little bit of the buttocks there. I just want to make sure I'm establishing all this well. The leg from the side view is a little bit thicker than from the front view, so I want to make sure that I get this leg in here, maybe like this, and then the leg actually usually starts, if the crotch is on the 3/4 view, typically if the crotch is starting like this and it's starting to angle up like that, we just see a little bit of the crotch like this. The leg is actually come way out here like that. We'll just see a little bit of that buttock. Knees gonna be there. And we'll have the and then we'll come back in a little bit later, oops, and draw in the foot here, but the foot, she's going to be coming like this and be on her tiptoes, so it's going to be a little different. It's not going to, it might step a little bit forward where it comes almost straight. That's only because she's pulling this leg is actually lower, and she's not pulling out far enough to be on the same plane as the foot, so it's stepping forward a little bit. Like I said, we're doing a little more complicated pose, so there's a lot more different things to consider when drawing it. But that right there is more realistic proportions. Now, how do we add in the breast, and then we'll add an anatomy to this. I'm just kind of lighten up a little bit here. And then when we add the breast in, what's really important to understand about breast is that if you had the ribcage from the front view, this is the sternum, and you have your deltoids here. You have your, actually it'll be a little bit longer than that, and then you have your biceps. Deltoids take up about half of the upper arm to the elbow. You have your pec muscles that come down, they attach to the sternum, they attach over here to the humerus bone. Then you have the collarbone come out like this, forming the shoulder as well as the scapula behind there. What's important here is that the pec connects to almost halfway into the scapula, and it comes over here like this and connects to the same point. And this is where the pec muscle attaches to the humerus bone, and over here to the rib cage. It kind of usually connects off just a little bit like that. And women also have that same pec muscle as men. The difference is that they have a connection point here with different glands, and the breast attaches and hangs off of that. So if they were more small-breasted, it would hang off like this. And another thing that's important is that it's kind of at an angle. So breasts, because the breasts lie on the rib cage like so. And one thing to understand about breasts, if you want to draw them more naturally, whether they're big or small, is that if you imagine you have it at that egg shape again, right? Let's say you buy a big styrofoam egg shape. That's to be pretty large, and then you get some water balloons and you have some double-sided tape or glue and glue them onto this egg shape. That's the part of the balloon that's touching the egg. The rest of the egg, or the rest of the balloon, water balloon, is resting on top of the egg like this, right? So the part that I have shaded right now, that's the part that's glued, of the water balloon that's glued to the egg. That is the big styrofoam shaped object that you buy from like a craft store. The rest of the water balloon that's not shaded in is the part that's resting on the egg. And some of it's not. Some of it's, coming up off the egg, but some of it's actually resting on the egg. It's different than if you had a flat wall. You take a piece of cardboard, not cardboard, a plywood, and then you have water balloons sitting on top of that. The effect is going to be a lot different because it's a flat plane. But the chest, when you look at the top view, it's not a flat plane. If you have the top part of the chest here, the rib cage goes around. It's a rounded thing, more like an egg. So the breasts are resting on a rounded object. And also to learn a little bit more about the breast, one thing you can do is if you're a male, is you can take water balloons, and let's say this is your neck, tie a string to where it wraps around your neck, goes around your neck like that, comes forward here, and ties to the water balloon. This is the end of the water balloon here where you have knots in them. And then the water balloon goes like this, and the water balloon is going to attach and rest on your body. Make sure you adjust the string so that it's around the same far down as breast would start. And then they're gonna rest on your ribcage very similarly to how actual breast would. And then you can take, oops, before I erase that, take double-sided tape or good mounting wall tape. Buy at Walmart for really cheap. It's like usually has red film on it, and you peel it off, and then it's like gray tape. It sticks really, really good. Put a couple pieces of that here on your chest so that this part of the water balloon is stuck to your chest. Now you got a very realistic idea of how breasts would work. And then you can kind of move around and hang, like bend over and stuff, and you'll see how the breasts are affected. Look at yourself in the mirror with the water balloons and turn 3/4 view and watch how different parts of the view of the breast are visible. Understanding that, then a little bit of the mechanics of the breast, what happens here as a general rule, you have this center line that comes down like this of the actual rib cage. Note that we're only seeing part of this front view of the rib cage. The rest of it is turning around in space because it's a curved object and it's going away from us. So we're only seeing part of the breast. The breasts have to fit. The breast that's farthest from us has to fit into this area. So it's going to hang. That is, it can't cross this line. This breast can't come over here like this. We're actually going to give her large breast here, but we're going to give her realistically large breast. So they're going to hang down. And actually, we don't want to hang them too far down past the start them up a little bit higher. We'll kind of come right here. We'll hang them down, but we're not going to hang them down too far. Something about like so, like that. And then we're going to remember that they come up and they attach. So remember, you have that muscle. Your pec muscle comes off your arm, kind of comes like this and kind of has a shape like that, and then connects to the sternum, connects to your collarbone, comes over here and connects back to the humerus bone. The breast is attached to that. So you have the breast that comes off of here, off of that right there, and you have the breast that fits into here. And what's important is that you have that little line right there. So when even on the side view, it comes up, and that little line comes up into your shoulder like that, right? So if you ever wondered why is that line there, that's why, because females have that pec muscle too. And since they have that same pec muscle, then you're going to have this little bit of skin that kind of comes off right here. It's part of your pec muscle underneath the breast, and the breast then attached to the body. One thing that's important in 3/4 view too is this breast is viewed more from a front view, but you are seeing a little bit of the side view of the breast over here. Like if this was a side view, you're seeing a little bit of the side view of the breast like that. Let me go ahead and make sure I still pull in her rib cage here. And like this, come out over here like that. I want to make sure I really keep that curvature in there. Imagine it coming all the way up where the breasts connect. Making sure I don't draw her breast too large for her frame. In this case, I'm going to make her nipples a little bit higher, somewhere right about here, than that drawing over there. But they have to fall on this same line, because she's on a different line. Damn it, I didn't mean to do that. She's on a different plane than the woman we're drawing. She's on this, she has a slight angle here. That same angle has to apply to her nipples, which is right about like that. It's not quite straight. It's almost straight, but not quite like that. I want to zoom in to draw it, but I'm trying to stay zoomed out so that you can see the whole thing as I'm drawing. All right, so the nipples have to fall on that same parallel line. So this collarbone is going to start over here. That collarbone is going to start here. It goes back in space. It's disappearing. Right, now we can see only part of the arm there because it's being obscured or blocked by whatever word you want to use, but anyways, being blocked by the so anyway, being blocked by the rib cage. This is the part I also want to make sure I get right. So if I have the hips now at a different angle, see they're angled down this way, right? Because remember her leg is pushing up this way. So typically, normally what would happen is you'd have the hips like this, they'd have an angle like that when you're drawing a 3/4 view. But because her leg she's pushing up on her leg here, even though she's being turned around in 3/4 view, which would usually have her hips kind of like at an angle rather than parallel lines, they actually angle down a little bit like this, opposite of the shoulders and breast and everything, which is angled more upward like this. And I also want to make sure I fix that breast too. It has to go down to that line. So let's go ahead and do that first. Otherwise, it's not going to look right. We also want to make sure we establish the shape. It's more flat and rounded because it's set the view we're viewing it from, and that has a set on the rib cage. All right, that looks right now. And then have the rib cage coming up. So her rib cage is being covered partly by the breast as they're hanging over it. And what I want to keep in mind here too is a general principle you can keep in mind with the belly button. If you kind of draw a line like an oval coming out from the belly button like this down to the legs, you can get an idea or a sense for where the hips will be because they're going to kind of come down at that angle right there. And so if that doesn't match up, then you know that you probably didn't draw the hips correctly. I don't want to give her that big of a leg. All right, so right here, I have that hip bone here. I want to make sure I have the bump of that hip crest coming in right here from the 3/4 view. That's about where it's going to be, right about there. And then it's going to come in and back out to the leg, because here you have if you have your pelvic bone here, you have your femur bone, which comes out like this, and it comes down here. Comes out here to the edge of the leg, believe it or not, like that. And so from the front view, that's why that's the thickest part. If you think about the front view, that's the thickest part of the female. So if you have your hip bones here, that is your iliac crest, then the love handle is attached to the top of that. The leg actually starts up here. This is the crotch, and comes down here. So the inside of the leg, this side of the leg is shorter than the outside of the leg because of where it attaches to the bone. Anyway, you have your bone that comes out, the femur bone, and it comes down here and forms upper part of your kneecap. And you have the patella in between there, and you have your tibia coming down that continues forming it. This bone actually protrudes and sticks out a little bit. One thing I want to talk to you about briefly here is that some people will be like, oh, so when you're drawing the figure, make sure you draw the hips here and then kind of angle in a little bit, and there's a little dip right here, and then come back out and come down to the leg. Well, why is that dip there? They don't explain the why, and not understanding the why isn't going to help you when you draw the person from a different viewpoint. But if you know it's because the femur bone sticks out and it sticks out right at the crotch area, that's where it sticks out the most. That is the actual thickest part of the female body, the part that sticks out the most, even on a very, very thin frame. Well, besides like her shoulders, but just considering her upper body here, collarbones, and then rib cage and stuff. Just consider that part of her body. This is the part that's the widest. So you kind of imagine a triangle coming up like that when you're drawing the female figure. Knowing now that the reason why you have that dip there is because you have the femur bone coming out here, you have the hip crest coming up here, so you have 2 points of bone here and here, and skin is stretched up from here, and it has to stretch between here and there. And when it does that, it kind of sinks in a little bit because there's 2 points of skin trying to be stretched taut against, but gravity and everything, it pulls it in the way that the muscles are. And if you learn all the muscles in between here, even makes more sense why it has that shape to it. However, some women do develop enough fat deposits here that you end up getting something shaped like this, where they have more of just a shape like that, and all that is filled in with fatty tissue. and so you can't see that dip at all. And in this case, the female body will just kind of go out like this to the widest part and come in, and then you'll have the little thin part, and then you'll have the rib cage come up like this. Understanding that now, we can see then that the widest part of the leg would be here and would be out here like that. They're going to be on that same line right here, this line we have established right here. So we want to make sure that we have the thickest part, actually went back too far, out here and right there. That's going to be the part pointing out. And so you have the, from the 3/4 view, you can kind of see the hip coming in. You see that little dip, and you see that right there. You can really see that in a woman if from the front view, if she has that dip, then from the 3/4 view on this side, you really see that dip. And the reason why is because as they turn around away from us, what happens is, I'm going to start erasing some of this stuff. It's getting a little jumbled. Anyway, so as they begin turning away from us, what happens is you're beginning to see more of the side plane view of this here. So if you have the side plane of the hips, they're kind of shaped, kind of looks like that, kind of comes in like this. That's part of the leg as well, but you have that iliac crest right there, and that little dip, you can really see that. See how much you can see it from the side view. So as you begin to turn, you can really see that same shape appear. We'll have the rib cage kind of come down almost at a straight angle here, like this. Actually, I want to have most of the arm hidden, so I'm going to actually pull this out a little bit farther than that. Again, I'm kind of getting her, I'm making her thinner than she ought to be. And the reason why I'm doing that is I'm so used to drawing comic book and manga women that if you do that for so many years, it kind of becomes, normal for you to draw your women much thinner than they need to be. A realistic thin woman, doesn't look the same as a comic book thin woman. They're a lot thinner. But when you add shadow and everything to a regular female, they actually look more normal. They look skinnier. So it's kind of an illusion. If you for example, take a photograph of a woman that looks rather skinny and has a nice body, and then after you take the photo of her, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Anyway, after you take the photo of her, trace it. And when you trace it, you're going to notice that it kind of, looks a lot thicker without any shadowing done to it. The person looks a lot bigger than they actually are. They look a lot thicker. Make sure I come all the way down to that point here where the hand will be in here, not be too big. Right, so now we have established pretty much the overall shape of the figure. Now, of course, we could have drawn this much, much faster if I wasn't explaining so much stuff. But it's important, I believe, to explain all that stuff so that we understand how, what it is we're drawing and why it looks the way it looks. People look a certain way for a reason. And in the 3/4 view, which is a very complex view to learn at first, especially when you're drawing from imagination, it can be hard to draw even from a reference point, actually. So even if you had a reference to go by, you might find yourself getting very frustrated. And hopefully now, with this video, you'll be a little less frustrated, because you'll understand more of the principles that go behind making the 3/4 view. Let's go ahead and get rid of those lines for now. I'm going to zoom in here for the head, make it a little bit easier for me to draw it. I'm not going to really talk much about the 3/4 view of the head. Actually, I'm not talking about it at all, am I? These are principles you can learn in other videos or in my head's course or something, or from somebody else's course. It doesn't have to be mine. All right, so now our sketch is starting to look how it should. Now we got to think about the side planes and everything that we're seeing. Right, a little bit about anatomy, a little about the things that we're looking at. So just like over here, we're seeing a lot of the side plane of the rib cage here. So this is all side plane here. If we light her up so that her front plane is lit up and the side view plane is not lit up, we can begin to see how this is going to be shadowed. We know that underneath the armpit, we're going to have more shadow, and even part of the breast here is going to have shadow because the breast comes all the way up. This is still, all this right here is still part of the breast, this whole shape right here, and even comes up like that. You can consider all that part of the breast. It's part of the pec muscles and everything are still there, but we're going to just draw them a little differently. That is, it flattens out up here more. You have a flatter planes, and then here is where you have your bigger, rounder planes. Think about the planes, think about the shapes, think about a wireframe going over the figure, and that's going to help you understand why you have this like kind of like indent right here, and it comes out from part of the breast. We're not going to shade it totally realistically, but we'll get the general idea down like that. So it comes in and it comes out like that because the light is hitting the front of her body. This is like some of the side plane of her breast. You have this top plane being lit and part of this side plane over here, the left side plane. But it has this curvature because when the light hits it, it's a curved object. So if you have a sphere, what happens? Either the light's going to look like this when it hits it, but it's going to have a shape like this, the shadow will, right? When the light hits it. Because when the light hits it, it's a spherical body. And so if the light's hitting there, it's going to gradually have a mid-tone here. And then you have this darkest tone out here where the light is reaching the less, right? So it has that curvature. So same thing with the breast. They're more rounded, so it has that curvature to it. This breast here is actually going to have some curvature like that, and then it's going to kind of come underneath. Some of the underplane is not going to be visible. And the whole breast is like more oval shape and lying because it's lying flat on the body. Next is you have the side plane here of the part that connects to the love handle and then to the hip. So the love handle is really squished up on the side, so you might have a couple wrinkles of skin in here. I'm not going to draw those right now because we're keeping it more simple. The hip bone here has a shape to it, and if you imagine this three-dimensional shape that it has to it, you can then see how the shadow and why the shadow usually either comes inward like this and then comes outward for the leg and connects down to the knee, or it'll kind of come outward like this just a little bit and come there, revealing that you see more of the side plane here. And it really just depends on the lighting. So we can go either way with this, and it's probably going to look right. I'm going to kind of come out like this a little bit, and then come down to that knee, the kneecap there, as we call it. But it's really the whole knee. I got to keep her in view here. The knee then is going to have this whole underplane here is going to be shadowed like that. The top plane is going to not be fully shadowed. Go a little bit into maybe a little bit into the anatomy here. We know we have this muscle that attaches to the patella. We'll just call it the knee. Comes up like this, and it forms the actual muscle here, which kind of looks like that. You have the serratus, which comes out around back there. You also have the inside muscle over here. I forgot the name of this one, and the one right here. I forgot the name of this one as well. But it kind of forms these three major muscles of the leg. We're not going to draw all that because she's not going to be super buff or anything, but I might want to hint at this muscle right here by adding a little bit of shadow right there to hint at that muscle, which is on top of the kneecap. And so if I want to get more detail here, I can erase some of that, show a little bit of that top plane of the kneecap, and kind of show there's this little side bone right here as well. I forget the name of this bone as well, but I don't, like I said, when I learn anatomy, I don't care to learn names of stuff. I just know what they are and how they work. But if you know the names, that's cool. Maybe you can go ahead and post it. I just forgot right now. I can look it up really easy. Yeah, this side here, so I'm going to be able to see a little bit of the top plane of the kneecap here on this side as well. Make sure you have the skin on each side. So you have the serratus muscle comes down like this and kind of connects down here like that, and that's what gives you this lump here, and then a separate lump like this here. That's what gives you this dent right here. Some people say just make sure you draw that dent, but why? It comes down to anatomy. I'm not going to get like deep into the anatomy right now because this is an anatomy class or anything, or anatomy tutorial or lesson. Just know that you want to learn those muscles there so you understand why it's shaped this way. And again, I have my anatomy course if you're interested in learning it that way, or you can learn from Glenn Villepeu or many other great people out there. a lot of them are going to be charging more than I charge. I try to make it my stuff accessible and affordable to people. The next thing is we're going to have a little bit of this part. You have lumps here like this. You think about the belly there's muscle there, and it depends how toned they are. It could just be like this could be all like one lump, but it usually sticks out a little bit farther. Then this will indent here, and the indent over here. And so we're going to show that by having the light hit part of this belly here. We'll also have this whole underplane down here lit up very darkly. The under part of the crotch area. That might have a little bit more shadow coming up this way like that. There might be another little line right here of shadow showing that you have that middle crease, and not every woman's going to have that middle crease. But notice I'm keeping her belly quite relaxed though. I'm not making it like she has like six pack or something like that. And it's just notice how much thinner she's looking now that I'm adding in all this shadow. Here we're going to see a little bit of the top plane of the deltoid, and then a lot of the side plane as well. I'm going to kind of change the shape a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. We'll see a little bit of that. It kind of angles down and comes in like this. So we'll see a little bit of that top plane, and it's going to be hit with light since the light's coming from above and over here like that. So it's kind of hitting all the front planes, and what would normally be if she was just facing in front of us, it's hitting the front of her body, not the side planes of her body. And it's also hitting the top planes of her body. So the deltoid kind of has a shape like this, and it kind of comes in. So usually you'll have like a shadow like this, and then you'll have a little bit of the bicep, which is going to be a little bit different and separate. You have the pronator teres muscle comes in here, and then connecting up here to the humerus bone. Sorry, I had a brain fart there. You have the brachioradialis coming out right here, and it comes down to the thumb side. There's another sister muscle that connects along with it. I can't treat it as one muscle that comes down to like the top of your index knuckle, basically. And that's what causes that V shape right here of darkness. So I just want to show you why. So again, I go over this kind of stuff in my anatomy course, but I'm just going to briefly explain certain things of the whys we get it. Naturally, though, the bicep it's kind of arms turn 3/4 view, so the biceps actually going to be over here a little bit more, and so that Y-shaped indent's going to be like right about there. The next part of shadow we're going to have is the forearm. The forearm we're not seeing much of the side of the forearm, and so it's very thin shadow. And that does show that we see, though, some of the side of the forearm there. Let's go back down here to knee area. So this whole part of the knee now, below this muscle, is all going to be in shadow. That might be a little bit darker because there's an under shadow there from this muscle right here. We're going to come to knee shadow. Now what happens here, what's interesting is you usually get like this kind of Z pattern here. You'll see this a lot done in cartoons, like basic kind of shadow like this. And why that's there is because you have this muscle that comes down right here by the kneecap. Then you have the calf muscle, which is behind the leg at this point. And then you have the shin bone coming off the kneecap as well. And the shin bone will come, and it's going to connect. It's going to come down like this. And it's going to connect to the inside, but we're going to see part of it like that. And the shin muscle comes over here like this. And then you have the calf muscle, which comes up right here into this area like that. And so it's that muscle and the calf muscle connecting together that form that kind of shape, and that will cause the shadow to kind of get this Z shape to it. You see, and that's what a lot of these, lessons out there lack. They lack that kind of knowledge. And yeah, it makes when I go into more detail like this, it definitely makes my lesson longer, but look how much information is packed in here. Yeah, it took you 48 minutes so far to learn how to draw a person in 3/4 view that has a more complicated pose to her, but you're learning so much information, hopefully. Hopefully what I'm saying is making sense and everything like that, and hopefully it's paying off for you and that it's worth watching. From the side view also, you can really see this serratus muscle as it comes down here like this, and then you have another muscle comes across this way, and I forget the name, but you have a kind of a pattern like this. And when you have that pattern, it affects the shadowing. So you have this under plane here, and it kind of stops and connects like this. And so it usually causes a shadow that looks more like that as it comes down here to the covering part of the knee, for the inside shadow of the leg. Shadowing is probably one of the most complicated things to learn of the human figure, but if you learn it, it's just fantastic. This muscle, and this time is connecting right to on the inside right to the calf, and so that forms more of a straight muscle like that. Because you have the calf, it actually kind of curves because of the remember it's on the inside like that. So this bone, the tibius that forms part of your shin bone, comes down and connects to the inner ankle here, and then the muscles on the outside over there. And so that's the part that's going to be in shadow. That's the inside part of the leg on the inside. So it looks different than over here. It doesn't have that little march or that notch as much, but you might see a little bit of it right here where it connects into the kneecap. And then you're going to have the heel, and the heel is actually going to come behind the ankle a little bit. The reason why that is because if you view it from the side view, you have your ankle here, then you have your heel, which comes like this. This is from the inside. Then you have that arch that comes like this, right? Ankle, the foot comes down, you have your toe, you have the straight part, you have the pad, like this, right? So, and the ankle's actually up here higher, sorry about that, I just was doing off the fly. When you draw it like that, there's part of the ankle that's behind, or part of your heel exists behind the ankle. So when you view it turned a little bit, then what happens is part of that heel actually goes behind the ankle. And this makes sense when you go through a course, like that teaches like my form course and how things overlap in perspective and things. I like to always imagine this horseshoe shape here on the feet, if not draw them, but if I do, I draw them very lightly in my sketches. But it's good to have that structure there because it can really help draw on the proper anatomy of the foot. This foot's going to be on her tippy toe a little bit, and so I'm going to kind of pull the arch of the foot down here, and I'm going to kind of change the angle to the toe there. Let's kind of erase some of that. I'm going to zoom in for this so we can really see what's being drawn here. So it kind of changes the angle like this. I'm not going to get really detailed with the toe because this is such a small drawing as it is. It's going to be hard, so I'm just going to kind of draw the toes like that. That's a little pinky toe back there. It's kind of being hidden. And what happens here is you have part of the ankle that's being in shadow, and then part of the foot here. The whole side plane of the toe and foot, that top plane of the foot is being lit by light. And it's that change of angle here, though, that down and across, that gives the illusion that she's standing on her toes. Because keep in mind, everything we're drawing is an illusion. You're going to have a little bit of that dip here. You have the bicep coming down here. The pronator teres comes from the inside of the arm, remember? And then you have the brachioradialis, which is coming to the outside of the arm over here, connecting to where the thumb's going to be. And so that causes that V shape there. And let's go ahead and add in that shadow. And part of the brachioradialis, if she has any tone to her, will be also in shadow just a little bit right there. And then this whole inside of her arm and underplane of the arm is also going to be in shadow, because that's the inside arm and also the inside arm over here. Side view of the neck will be in shadow. We're not going to get too detailed with that. There'll also be a little bit of shadow right underneath there if she has a defined collarbone and so forth. But we're just keeping it really basic for now. This foot's a little different. We're seeing the ankle, we're seeing the heel going a little bit behind it, not much. And then this is the flatter part of the foot. This isn't the inside arch. This is the pinky toe side. The big toe side is going to come over here. And I'm not going to get into this right now because this video is already so long, but you have this shape like this, and then it comes out to the foot. And the reason why that is has to do with anatomy. Again, I'm not going to get into it right now, just because I feel like the video is already pretty long. I'm just going to kind of make it some generic looking toes there. In fact, I'm not even going to do the toes because they didn't come out right and I don't like it. Let me try it one more time. 1, 2, 3. And then the pinky toe kind of goes like this. 4. Anyway, kind of fits in there a little bit. It's kind of squished up and not quite the right angle, but it looks okay, I guess. Whatever. Not going to be a perfectionist about it right now and try to fix it. And so there we have it. We have our woman from the 3/4 view in a more complicated pose. This foot is actually coming out. So if you were to view her from the side view, what I've done here is, let's say this is her buttock area, this is her rib cage, her back comes here, her hips come down, out. You have this leg that she's standing on, which is this leg here. So she's standing on that leg. The other leg is kind of, even though I'll show it from the front view too, but the other leg is kind of coming out in front of it just a little bit, not much, but it is coming in front of it a little bit, and because of that, oops, actually it's kind of angled down more like that because she's on her toes a little bit. Anyway, get the idea. So it comes in front of this foot a little bit, coming toward us, the viewer, and that's why it's on a separate level plane than us, because it's coming forward a little bit. I could have kept it on the same plane, and so from the side view or from the front view, she has one leg that she's standing on. Her hips are like this. This is the leg she's standing on. This leg is coming out, but it's also coming toward us a little bit, so it comes on a slightly different plane. So in the 3/4 view, you can still see that happening. All right, anyway, you can take this same knowledge here and you can apply it if you're used to watching my videos because you like the style of manga or comic books, and that's what I typically will draw in that style. You can still apply the same method, the same concepts. In fact, in order to draw comics, in order to draw manga, you want to learn anatomy from realistic. You want to do a lot of life drawing and things like that. The reason why is because you're stylizing realism, but it's always recommended. Any comic book place wants you to be able to draw realistic people. Sorry, that was like a weird air thing. I don't want to cut it out. It wasn't like a burp. I don't know what it was. Like air moving in my chest region. Anyway, so I don't know if it came out on microphone or not. When drawing the figure, they want you to know how to draw anatomy from realistic point of view. They want you to have gone through the life classes. They want you to be able to draw all that. That way, when you're drawing your comic book characters, you can draw them quickly from your mind, and all you're doing is stylizing it. That's all you're doing. You can take this exact same pose and then just stylize it, to fit more into whatever style it is you're drawing. So if you wanted to fit it into more, manga style or something like that, you're going to start with much, you still have the same kind of shape here and stuff, but you're going to, to be much more stylized, right? You can see how this right here would be a much more stylized person. Actually, I'm going to have the arm going behind her and coming up like this. Right, so already you can see this is much more stylized. The breast is going to be higher. They're going to kind of come out. They're going to be shaped different as well, as if she has a boob job. Let's say this is the leg that her weight's on. Much longer legs as well. This is the leg that's kicked out. Make sure it's on that same angle. So I'm still following all the same principles. I'm just stylizing it so it has more of a manga look, much more skinnier and everything. Then I can go ahead and skin this person, add on muscles and stuff like that and a little bit of anatomy. And, I don't have to add as much anatomy because it's much more simple of a drawing. And part of the stylization is simplification. I'm going to go ahead and just leave that there. What the hell? But anyway, you get the idea. So you take that same thing and then you can go and shade it the same way I've done her, but it's going to be more of a stylized figure. And anyway, so hopefully that helps you. That's the basic principle. You see how fast I drew that. You can draw her just as fast once you get used to, this particular kind of pose from a 3/4 view. You can also have her hips facing forward and then just have her upper body twisted, and that will give, I think, a better view to this pose. Typically, it's more sexy when like the hips from the 3/4 angle isn't quite as sexy as from the front angle. So it's usually better if you want to have the hips facing forward. Right, so you're gonna, have the same pose, have the hips facing forward. So but you're still gonna have them on an angle, right? So let's say you're gonna have this leg up. So still have it pushed up like this. And one thing you can do is actually, I'll show a little quick trick here. You have the ball here, and you have the hip on there. And so I'm gonna have the hip on this ball, like so. And then I'm gonna have the rib cage coming off of that ball as well, connecting to the same ball. This would be like the rib cage coming down to that center view, and I can turn that rib cage if I want to. Right, so that's the front view of the legs. But we're going to have a twisted view for the upper upper torso. And so all you have to do then is just think about what does it look like. So you come up here, you know you're going to have your collarbone somewhere in this area. And I use that same 3/4 view as I did before with the rib cage. You kind of come like this. We're going to be viewing part of the side of the rib cage, like so. Part of the side here, but then we're viewing front here, right? So because the hips are facing forward. Again, this is very stylized. Figured I'd go ahead and give you guys some of the stylized figure anyways in this video. And maybe this arm is still doing the same thing as it did over there. Oops. Something like that. So now it's from a 3/4 view. And a little bit of the shoulder and so forth. So I kind of mixed two. I mixed a front view and a 3/4 view. And then you have to kind of twist this figure a little bit right in here. There's a little twist that happens. But there you have it. Again, I really hope this has been helpful to you, and if it has been helpful to you, I know this is not just a tutorial. This isn't just like a 5-minute YouTube tutorial. This is a full-on art lesson that you might get at university. If you were to go to university and actually take an art lesson, this would be like one of the classes you take, about an hour-long class, and you learned a ton of information, hopefully, and hopefully you'll find this information useful. And if so, please go ahead and pass it around, because I know it's hard to find these kinds of lessons on YouTube for free. It's hard to find these kinds of lessons anywhere for free. I know that because I'm constantly searching for lessons to see what kind of teaching there are out there. And when I first started learning, I was constantly looking for lessons, well, rather relearning. When YouTube was in its very infancy, I was trying to relearn certain things, and it was really hard to find videos on anything. I also want to see what people were doing, and anyway, so I just know it's, and also the subject matters I try to learn. It's hard to find free tutorials on those subjects. Anyway, like, you know, growing marijuana and stuff, it's very just like average things. That's when I first started growing. I've been growing now for several years, so I got it down now. But anyway, find it useful, please go ahead and share it. Let's go ahead and do one more thing really quickly before we, you know, if you're still watching at this point, it's like, what the hell, who cares if it's an hour long or longer, you know? If you're still with me, you're still with me then. So I might as well go ahead and add the hands in here really quickly. That hand, I'm going to leave it behind the thing, behind the leg. This hand I'm going to bring in front of the leg. So you have the part of the arm, the wrist bone here, the side of the arm you can see, and so that we know the thumb is actually going to start off of there because we're viewing part of the inside side of the arm. And we know that when we view it that way, if we have anatomy down, then you'll be able to see the thumb connecting all the way into that part of the wrist right there. This being the top plane, that being the side plane, so the thumb starts there. You don't want to make it too big. This is a problem that can happen very easily when you zoom in like this in Photoshop. So what I want to do here is zoom out first. Make sure I have the basic idea of thumb size, because I don't want to make anything too big. Basic idea of hand size here. I know my wrist is going to come, and it's going to bend like right in here. Little bump like that, and then it's going to come down. That's going to be the shape of the base shape of the hand, and then fingers. Right here, I might be able to see the back fingers back there, and part of that middle finger. And once you have that down, then you come in, erase some of it, and then start sketching in your hand correctly. If you zoom in like that without first drawing it, you might find yourself drawing hands way too big. That's a mistake I make all the time when I zoom in. I forget to have a decent enough sketch done, and so when I zoom in, I end up drawing it way, way too big. I'm going to use a little smaller brush here for this detail as well. That right there is actually, so what I just drew right there is I want to imagine a line coming like this, connected to the arm, and then there's going to be a little notch right here at that line that kind of comes out like this, away from the arm, and then it comes back down to the actual first knuckle, which is here. That little notch is actually part of the wrist, and it's something that you can see a lot when you bend the hand, and you'll see that it kind of instead of just coming out and bending. Anyway, it's where you bend the wrist there. It just has that kind of cool look to it. Again, this takes understanding anatomy, and unfortunately, I can't teach all that in one video. My anatomy course itself is 60 hours long, and even that is like not covering everything there is to know about everything in anatomy. But it moves quite quickly. It's not like repeat information or anything like that. It's actually a very quick moving course. But however, you guys might want to know this. So I'm coming out with the how to draw manga bodies. A lot of information can be applied to drawing comics and real figures and everything, but I'm sticking to the stylized view of the manga figures, which is very stylized, even different than comics. And so I'm just going to talk about that really briefly here. That I'm going to be coming out with that course. I think it's going to be really cool, and it's already halfway done. And well, actually, it's more than halfway done. But anyway, it's really cool so far. I'm liking the way it's coming out. It's my basic, how I teach, but on a much more tight level. Like this video right here isn't thought out. I don't like pre-write stuff or anything like that for this video. This is just a live video, kind of like you're coming to class and I'm giving a lecture really quickly off the top of my head. I'm not pre-doing it. I've never done this lecture before. It's just like the first time doing it, and it's just doing it really quickly. When I'm doing my manga course, this is how I do my courses now, is I actually pre-think the entire lesson, and then I condense it down into words, write it down, everything, make sure that I'm going from point to point, I'm not getting sidetracked, and so that way I've taken my lessons and I made it much shorter. So my manga course of how to draw manga bodies would probably have been a 20-hour course, but now it's going to be a 4 or 5 hour course, but all the same information is going to be there. It's just more compacted, and I'm not getting sidetracked and things like that, like I often do here on my videos that are more like just like doing like a live recording. I record it one time and try to get it nail it that first time. If I don't, sometimes I might record it again. But anyway, I don't do no editing or anything like that. With the manga course, I do the editing. I make sure that I get it down correctly. If I have to like record just 2 minutes and then stop, and then record the next 2 minutes and put it together, and I'll do it that way. The point is that it's a really awesome course. You guys are probably looking forward to it. What I wanted to say was about anatomy, I'm doing a really, really condensed, like just fast anatomy portion in that course. Something I didn't do in the pinup course. So it'll be kind of like a super duper flash anatomy lesson. And it's going to teach a lot of stuff in a very short amount of time, but you can watch it over and over again. What I do also plan on coming out with is an anatomy crash course, because I know not everyone has 60 hours to sit there and draw along with me and watch an anatomy course. And so only the most dedicated people are going to do that. So I want to come out with an anatomy course that's like a crash course anatomy for comics and manga or something like that, I'll call it. But it'll also be for regular figure drawing as well, because anatomy is anatomy. And I want to condense it down to like 10 hours if I can. Maybe even if I can condense it down to 5 hours, I will. But that's going to be really hard if I want to keep all the information. This anatomy course won't be as detailed as the other one. I won't go through under muscles. I'm only going to stick to those muscles that are important, the surface muscles and where they attach on the stick figure, and in general where they attach. I'm not going to get into exact detail where they attach like I did in my anatomy course. That's why it's so long, because it has so many details. It's very, very accurate. It's still going to be accurate enough. For example, when I talk about the breasts in this video, and I had the pec muscle, and you have the rib cage in here, and you have the sternum, I just drew it as a line. I didn't get all down and draw exactly as it's shaped. So you have a little bit of a region between there. Anyway, it comes down like here. It connects to part of the coastal region. I'm not going to explain all that. I'm just going to be like, it connects to what would be known as a sternum. So this part of the rib cage comes down, it connects a little bit to the part of the rib cage here at a curve, comes up, connects to the humerus bone. Actually connects up a little higher than that. You have your collarbone, which comes down here, and then it connects to part of the collarbone like that, and then bam and bam. So it'll be done much quicker, but the same information is going to be there, and it's going to be done on stick figure type people. So it's more approachable, and also I'm going to go into more details of how to draw anatomy on different poses. And so that's gonna be pretty cool. Another thing I'm thinking about doing lessons like this is doing like quick lessons where I'm drawing a certain pose, but I first start out like this, draw the pose like in some stick figure type, not stick figure, but I don't know what this is, sort of a mannequin gesture-y type thing. And then after I have that down, go in and start showing the anatomy a little bit and start adding in some of the muscles, kind of talk briefly about where they connect and things like that, so you can start taking that anatomy to another level, to a more three-dimensional level. Anyway, so if you guys think that would be cool to come out with more lessons like that, let me know. And with the anatomy course, since I already have an anatomy course out, do you guys think it's worth making another anatomy course that takes a slightly different approach to anatomy, much more quicker, much more relevant to drawing just the the muscles you can actually see that are important, and only the important ones where they connect. That way you know how they change and shift when they move, and also drawing them from a couple different poses so we can really see how those muscles attach from different viewpoints. So anyway, that's one of the courses I have in mind for the future. And if you guys think it's worth doing, let me know. I really like you guys' feedback. All you YouTube subscribers really help a lot in what kind of material I should come out with. I know a lot of you guys have been saying, come out with a landscape course. I do have a couple landscape lessons. So type in like background. So go to my YouTube channel and type in background in the search for my channel, and or backgrounds. And I know I have at least one video that has the word background attached to it that talks about how to draw landscapes. I think another one might have the word landscapes in it. I know I have at least 2 tutorials on YouTube though. They're kind of old, but that talk a little bit about backgrounds and drawing them. But I understand it'd be really cool to have a whole course on that. And if I do one, it's going to be a course on not just landscapes and backgrounds, but also on composition, because that's like part of, I kind of see that as kind of part of the same topic or same area of teaching. The same topic, yeah, that's what I meant to say. I know there's other courses people ask me for. The manga courses people ask me for a long time, and I'm just now getting around to doing them. I already did the how to draw manga faces and hair. Now I'm doing how to draw manga bodies. Another one I wanted to draw, and I'm just not sure which one I want to draw next after the manga bodies. One that a lot of people have been requesting is how do they draw what they're looking at? They want to know how to draw what they see, and that's cool and everything. I personally like to draw from my imagination. Like all this, I'm not looking at anything. This is all just from my imagination. I prefer that kind of drawing, but it's much harder to do at first, but after a while it gets easier and easier. But you have to start somewhere. You have to first learn how to draw what you see. And so I'm thinking about doing that course because I get a lot of requests for it, how to draw what you see. There's actually more to it than just look at it and draw it. There's actually a lot of rules and things and tips that really help to draw what you see, whether it be a person or a lamp on a desk, doing still life or something. There's actually a lot to it, with measurements and negative space and relative angles and opposite angles and things like that you can use to better help see what you're looking at, to train your brain to see what you're looking at and draw it better. Anyway, I know I've rambled on a lot here at the end, but if anyone is still with me, please go ahead and comment and let me know what course you want to see next, because it really does influence what course I come out with next. I mean, I'm going to eventually come out with all these courses, but it might be years from now, so I might be dead, who knows. So if you really want to see a course on a certain topic, or you want to at least see a tutorial lesson here on YouTube on a certain topic, please comment and post it, because the more posts I see on a certain topic saying please do this course or please do this lesson, that you have a greater chance of seeing that lesson come out or seeing that course come out first rather than years down the line. And again, no one's guaranteed life, so I might never get to that course because I'll be dead, maybe. Anyway, thank you for watching. That last part was a little depressing, talking about being dead, but I don't mean it to be depressing. Death is actually a great thing in a way. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. That gets into philosophy and stuff. Oh, and by the way, I am coming out with new YouTube channels. I know a lot of people ask me to make the philosophy channel, and I don't want to have all these different channels I'm trying to manage, so I'm thinking about lumping in. I'm definitely making a channel on meditation, guided meditation, and teaching tricks how to meditate, and also guiding you through different meditations on different subject matters, like how to relax and feel calm and get rid of stress. Maybe another guided meditation on how to have the mindset of prosperity, things like that. Also, I'm going to do hypnosis for the same reason, which is very similar to a guided meditation. That's all going to be one channel. I'm thinking about making, every now and again, making a philosophy video on that channel. I think it would fit that channel better. Another channel me and my girlfriend are working on is going to be a ASMR channel. I know that a lot of people really commented on my ASMR video I made a long time ago, and they said I had the voice for it, worked really good. Some people actually watch my regular drawing videos for ASMR effect, which is really cool. But that one I particularly made to to elicit that effect of asthma, which is like that really relaxed, tingly feeling. And I love getting that feeling. And every now and then I'll jump on YouTube and watch videos just for that effect. Usually I don't look for asthma videos though, because a lot of the ones that are trying to make asthma videos don't work all that great. It's the ones that aren't trying to make them. But I know what triggers asthma. A lot of people don't quite know it. I understand what triggers asthma, so I think I can make those videos, and my girlfriend can make those videos, and so we'll be making videos together and doing different things like a soft brush on the skin, things like that to trigger asthma. So that's another channel I'm gonna be starting here soon with her, and I think that's it for now. There are other channels I have working on, but it might be a little while before they actually come out. But those two channels should be out very soon, and I'll post videos first to my art channel, saying, hey, this is, of whatever topic. I'll post a guided meditation video again. Then I'll say, hey, if you want to watch more guided meditations, go to my new channel, because I don't want to cloud this channel up with too much off-topic stuff. And that's why I want to start those new channels. So, hey, look forward to that. If you guys think that's cool, let me know, and I'll let you guys know once those channels are up and running, and once we start getting videos put out on them. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, subscribe. I probably have like 2% of the people left now watching the video out of all the people that watch it. That's okay.